Right, today I've got Norman Gregory. Hello, Norman. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good, brilliant. Um, I like the flowers in the back there. Just
Oh yeah, they're from the
out the
allotment.
garden.
No, the allotment.
Oh, I didn't
Of
know you.
course, the thing is that we when we came here, Carolyn's really into sort of growing things and baking things, and we went to try and get an allotment, and they said, oh well, 8 years
Yeah,
or whatever,
yeah, I can imagine.
So, but I said, well, let's just stick our name down. You never know. I said, and then it was about 6 years, 7 years later, they said, oh, well, we've got an allotment for you. So we went along to see it, and you've never seen anything like it. I mean, it hadn't been touched for 20 years. It was
No,
just,
I can imagine. Yeah,
and we said, okay, but if we'd have got this 8 years ago, we'd have had a chance. But we're older now, and I don't really think we're up to this. So they said, oh, that's okay. You can have the one next door if you want. So we were so lucky because it's got water,
oh, brilliant. Yeah,
and
yeah.
that, because otherwise, every time you grow anything, you've got to go and get the water and carry it back. But no, it was wonderful. And Carolyn's very good. She's got loads of flowers. She actually did it because she wanted to be able to have cut flowers, but she's sort of got into the vegetables now, and we just have fantastic vegetables
Yeah, that's
all the
great.
time, all fresh food. Lovely, lovely.
Brilliant stuff. So,
Yes,
Norman,
yes.
first question that should have been, what do you do apart from gardening?
Well, I'm sort of retired now, and I play the guitar. But no, I'm an actor, or I was an actor. I still have an agent who's still trying to get me work. But no, I mean, I had a very, looking back, I had a very successful career. I didn't see it that way at the time because I kept thinking, oh, this isn't what I want to do. I want to be a superstar. And but looking back now, I think I was very lucky. I think I had a very good agent who didn't actually say to me, listen, you can't do that. You're not good at that. And she just turned around and she said, well, and she was really good, and she steered me well. And as I say, at the time, I wanted to do grander things, but you can earn a very nice living and be very happy just doing, not necessarily being the front man, if you like.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, I still do the odd bit, but there again, I was an actor for what, 40 years, and then I went to Bournemouth University and did a master's course in film and television direction, which was pretty shocking, to sort of walk in there on the first day. I've been persuaded by this guy called Trevor Hearing, a lovely man, who was in charge of media at Bournemouth. And he said to me, you should do this. You get so much out of this course. And in the end, I said, okay, I'll do it. But of course, I didn't realise that I went in on the first day, and the oldest person there was 21 years of age, and I was retired. And I tried to sit at the little desk. I couldn't get my knees under it, because anyway, but I sort of slowly, they began to accept me, because I think they realised that I knew a little bit about the business.
Yeah.
And it was really amazing because sort of or I say kids, young people that would really, I wouldn't have spent time with them. I'd have just dismissed them. I'd have thought, well, what is this idiot, you know?
Yeah.
But suddenly this guy turned around to me. We had to do this presentation, and he said, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, I thought I'd do it on Reservoir Dogs, you know? So he said, oh, cool, man, yeah, come on, we'll do it together. And I couldn't believe it. We got up there and we wiped the floor. It was just wonderful because we both were in tune with each other.
Yeah.
And as time went on, a lot of the people who were just as keen as I was, you know, you sort of assume that because you're old, other young people aren't as keen as you are. And it's wrong. But there were the odd people that were there that just didn't give a sod. They weren't interested. All they wanted was that piece of paper with the degree on, so they could take it back to China and become head of TV in China or something.
Well, you mentioned that to me about the piece of paper situation.
Yes. And we had a girl there. I won't mention any names, but there was a girl there. And we were filming, and she was just every time we were going for a take, she'd mess everything up. And I'm sure it was just, I don't give a fuck. And all this went on, and I said to her at the end, I said, what are you going to do when you leave here? So she said, well, whatever I do, I'll do it. I said, well, let me just tell you, I said, can I give you a little bit of advice? I said, if you carry on like that, you will never work, because nobody will employ you a second time. And if nobody will employ you a second time, got news for you: you don't work.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that's the sort of advice I used to give to to people who are musicians. You know, this: if you're going to be the diva,
yes,
you're going to get one gig, and that's
it.
Yes. And one of the most important things, of course, is, you know, when they talk about networking, this is one of my bees in my bonnet. You know, it's really about making friendships.
Yes.
And if people like you,
yes,
you know, and you could, and obviously you've got to be able to do the thing. You've got to be able to turn it. But a lot of it is like being punctual and, you know, being easy to get on with, isn't it?
Yes.
And that's it. But, you know, some people have got ideas that are very sort of strange. Now, I need to take you back to like the beginning of how you started your sort of interest in acting. So what really got you interested in making a decision about getting into acting?
I think the first one, the first time I ever noticed it, Richard Harris was did a movie, and I think it was Cromwell, and it was this big speech at the end. Yeah. I thought, oh, this is wonderful. Yeah. And then I sort of forgot all about it. And I went off and I did what most young people did who didn't have any qualifications and were dreadful at school and just failure. And I sort of did one job after another, trying to find something. And eventually I got into photography, and I went off abroad to Nigeria. And I worked out there, and then I came back. I was in South Africa, and I came back, and I would be about 24, something like that. But I was at a loose end, and I met this old guy called, his name was Joe Holroyd. I mean, he's passed now. But he was really, really generous with his time. And he said to me, listen, you could be an actor. And I said, what? So he said, yeah. He said, but you got to put the work in. He said, you know, it's not like you just turn up and be a star. So I said, well, okay, so what you're saying? So he said, well, I know this place in Liverpool, and it's theatre and education. And if you go down there and you do this and you do that and you do your audition pieces, you might get in which case you'll get an equity card, which in those days was very, very important, because you didn't just walk into everything. And so he said, well, anyway, cut a long story short, I went off, I did the call, I did the audition, I got the part, and I did TIE touring for about 6 months. And then he came to me and he said, I tell you what, he said, I'm doing panto in Ayr in Scotland. Do you want to do panto? So I said, well, what would I do? He says, you can do the comic. So I said, oh, okay. So I went off and I did it. And then I carried on trying to do bits and pieces, and I did another panto. And then he says to me, I've got summer season at Mablethorpe. And I thought, no. So he said, you'll have to work very hard. So I said, well, okay, so what's the deal? He said, well, you turn up. So I turn up at Mablethorpe, and I'm the sort of junior member of the cast for summer season. And the first thing he gave me a shovel. And I said, what's the shovel for? He says, you'll see when you get in the theatre. And it was called the Dunes Theatre, Mablethorpe. And the first thing everybody had to do was shovel all the sand out of the theatre, because the wind had blown it under the doors all through the winter. Anyway, jumping forward again, at the end of the season, I'd worked really, really hard doing a children's show every afternoon on my own. I was allowed one guest from the senior show. And I did this, and at the end of the season, all the kids, because they were using it like a creche, all the people who had shops said, oh, drop the kids off for the day, you know. And you got all these gifts from all the kids. It was amazing.
Right.
And then he came on stage and he said, now I've got a special treat for Uncle Norman. And he said, here you are. He said, Uncle Norman should be doing better things than this. So we're sending him off to RADA. And I said, what? You know, he said, well, he said, you've done us really, you know, he says, financially, you've got us out of the crap. He said, but he said, what we've decided is that we had a whip round from the cast and everything. He said, what we've done is we've booked you a 1-week pro course at RADA. He said, and we've booked a bed and breakfast for you to stay in for the week. And I went to RADA for a week, just for a week.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I was doing Hamlet, you know, like, with a northern accent, you know. And it was anyway, there was a woman there who used to do the warm-up physical dance. June Kemp, her name was. Lovely lady. And she came to me sort of halfway through the week, and she said, Norman, she said, have you got £5? So I said, yeah, okay. What for? Just give me £5. So I gave her the £5, and she came back to me the next day. She's right. She says, I've booked you an audition at RADA. She said, you won't hear anything for like 6-8 months. She said, but you will get a call. And when you get the call, whatever you're doing, you come in, you do the audition and see if you can get in. And I said, I'll never get in here. You know, not proper RADA. So she said, she said, you haven't seen the rest. I said, I said, there's 3,000 people audition. She says, you haven't seen the others. Anyway, it was a laugh. So next thing I knew, I was doing Long John Silver on tour in weekly rep, touring the Adelaide Theatre, which is just south of London. And I came back and I auditioned. And it didn't go well. I tried in Hamlet, you know. And this was the Hamlet that I'd learned. Obviously didn't remember it that well. But anyway, there was this guy called Jeff Bullen on the great director, fabulous director. And he was on the panel. And after I'd done the audition, you would take them back upstairs because you did the audition in the theatre in the basement. And I was taken back upstairs and I was put in this room. No chairs. We all had to sit on the floor. And so the guy says, just sit there. We'll let you know what's happened. So I said, oh, okay. And I'm sat there and I'm in a pair of jeans because I didn't have anything else. And I'm looking at this girl opposite and she's in a ballet tutu, in ballet shoes, immaculate, pink, you know, all pink. And she's just looking at me, you know, and we're all in the same boat, you know. And then somebody said, "Oh, somebody's leaving." So we all rushed up to the window, and then we watched this person walking down the street with their head down. They'd obviously been told no. So, but anyway, then the guy comes in. He says, "Oh, Norman Gregory." So I said, "Oh, yeah, well." He says, "No." He said, "I'm just giving you warning. You'll be called back." But one of the directors says, "Have a look at your lines." I thought, oh, I should jump forward. And then there's Vic saying, "What's this?" You know, with the music in front of you. But anyway, it was. So anyway, I went down and I did it again. And then I came out, and the guy just says, "Hold on a minute." Upstairs, Hugh Crotwell. So he was the principal. I didn't know that at the time, but he was the principal. And he just said to me, he said, "Okay, sit down." So I sat down. So he said, "Where else have you auditioned?" I said, "Nowhere." I mean, I didn't know any of the drama schools. I never heard of Central or... Anyway, so he said, "Right." He said, well, "Why haven't you auditioned anywhere else?" So I just said, "Well, I don't want to go anywhere else." He said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Well, the longer it takes before you're here, the more certain you'll be that you're in." And I went out trying to work this out in my head. What did he say? You know, the more certain. Anyway,
Yeah.
I got in, and it was the best thing. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. There was only 21 people in RADA, and so you in a term, and you sort of, and everybody in there was so talented that you know these kids. There was one, David Lerner, I remember. I don't think I don't know what happened to him as time went on, but the man could pick up any musical instrument and play it. Any. He sat at a piano, blew a trumpet, blew a French horn. It didn't matter. Just picked it up and he played it. And which was important because immediately you were told to learn a song or learn something. You had to have somebody to play it so you could hear the tune.
Yeah.
And there was so much talent. And when I look back now, and I think, because there's only sort of 3-4 people who sort of make a very good living at it.
Yeah.
And out of the 21. But, any one of them could have, because I worked with them, because you do show after show after show after show, and they have like 3 theatres. So you're constantly working. And it was just fantastic. You saw people who you just thought, well, it's awesome. I mean, Imelda Staunton was there. She was in the term above me. No, below me. And I mean, she was just phenomenal. What a voice that woman has. And lots of people like that, Kieran Hines. Every day you went in, you were just so happy to be there, and you just felt you were so privileged.
Yeah,
and I suppose that is what maybe it gets you through, because before that, I mean, I'd auditioned to be an extra, but once I got to the end of RADA and I'd done the big shows, as they call them, which were big. I mean, not just in terms of I did When Thou Art King, which is Henry IV Part 1, Henry IV Part 2, and Henry V. So you play Hal right through to Henry V, 5.5 hours.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, forget the audience. For you, it's hard work,
Yeah.
But it was. But anyway, the great thing was that I got a letter from an agent. Can't get an agent to save your life, and then suddenly an agent contacts you and says, "Can we represent you?" And you thought, "Oh, what?" So anyway, I went to see her, and her name was Susan Angel. And she's passed now. Everybody's passed. But she was she was the daughter of, I think it's Daniel Agent, the big producer director in the 30s. But she was absolutely lovely, and she just always, everything, you know, if you got stressed about anything, she always calmed it down. But then that became very irritating because they realised when I got back off bridge, they realised that they could make so much money out of me in TV commercials. And for me, it was a frustration. I don't want to do TV commercials. Oh, excuse me, you're only earning 20 times what anybody else is earning for a day. Why are you not liking this? But Susan was always really, she always calmed everything down and brought things back to reality. And but anyway, but it used to pee me off. You know, I'd do an odd telly here, an odd telly there, and then, oh, well, you're up for 4 TV commercials this week, and you're going off to Germany to film it. It was all TV commercials. But looking back now, I sort of think there is a little sort of pattern in my life where I was constantly frustrated and wasn't achieving what I wanted to achieve, but some lucky blessing person was sort of saying, you're better off doing this, you're better off doing that. Actually, you'll enjoy this more, it's less frustrating, and you make more money. But, you know, and at that time, there was a big stigma that, you know, for instance, when you did your credits for your agent for the Spotlight, you never mentioned a TV commercial. You could have done 30 TV commercials that year, but you wouldn't, you know, you didn't put one down. You never mentioned it. If they said to you, if you went up to the RSC or something and they said, right, we're looking for this part, what you been doing? You had to make up stuff. You'd say, oh, well, I've been a Canterbury rep up until a week ago. You hadn't. You'd finished 6 weeks ago, but you didn't say, well, I've shot 15 commercials all over the world. But oh no, you had to pretend that you hadn't done a commercial.
That's really interesting. You mentioned because obviously you mentioned a film just now. So when did you first get an opportunity to be in a film?
Well, it was. I just left RADA and I went into this dreadful play. I was doing understudy, it was She Won't Lie Down. It was Richard Murdoch and another guy, Benny Hill's stooge, and it was terrible. And I went and auditioned for and got the part in A Bridge Too Far, which was a very small part, but it's a very big film. And they told me, and my agent told me, Sue, she said, Norman, she said, they want you for Bridge. So I said, oh. So she says, and it's 6 months. I said, 6 months? So she said, yes. So she said, so you got to get out of this contract. So I said, oh, right. So I went and I told Dickie Murdoch, I told everybody, you know, of course, I've got this part in this film. I said, it's not a massive part, but it's important to me, you know, and I'm not an understudy, I'm playing myself. So they said, you haven't got a prayer. So, because they said the producer who was producing it was a real shyster, and he said, he'll never let you out. So they said, I said, but why? I said, you know, I'm an understudy anyway. Anyway, they gave me all this all week. Oh, he's coming up at the weekend, you'll have to talk to him. And they were all winding me up. Anyway, I went in to see him, and he said, what is it? So I said, well, I've got an opportunity, and I'd really like to take it. So he said, doing what? So I said, it's doing a film in Holland. So he said, and you really want to do it? I said, yes, I'd really, really like to do it. He said, all right. He said, well, you're only an understudy. He said, just get somebody else to do your job and I'll let you go. He said, but you've got to get somebody else to agree and come up. We're in Kirkcaldy in Scotland. He said, you've got to get them to come up here and start next week. So I said, okay. And I did. My agent found somebody, and they got it. But he was super. He was just like, get out, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I got it, and that was me getting A Bridge Too Far, which was absolutely amazing. I remember having a conversation with the wonderful Sue. I said to her, I'm not sure about this. She said, what's not to be sure about, Norman? You're getting paid. I said, yes, yeah, I see that. I said, but I'm really not sure. I mean, I haven't got that many lines. She said, Robert Redford, Ryan O'Neill, Gene Hackman, Laurence Olivier, Sean Connery. She says, why are you even discussing this? Yeah. She says, you will go out there. She said, and you will shoot. She said, and when you come home after 6 months on a film, she says, you will know how everything works and you will know what to do when you're in front of a camera. So I said, oh, okay. Anyway, so that was it. I had a party in my bedsit the night before, got absolutely laced, went to Heathrow and got the flight and got on with all these other guys, you know, for the start, and that was it. You know, it was wonderful. And when we got to, of course, it was Bridge Too Far, which the press had called an hour too long. And but anyway, I went with with Sue, and we went to the premiere up, and I saw my name come up on the screen, and I thought, oh, this is it. This is it now, you know. And, but fortunately, it was like about 6 months after we'd finished shooting, and then the thing was that they'd shot about 6 or 8 hours, Dickie Attenborough, and he kept saying, oh, we've got too much. We have to, you know, we used to do rushes in the evening. We've got to cut. And when they actually cut it all, I thought, I've got even less, you know, but it didn't matter. But what I realized afterwards was, whenever I went in for an audition for anything, whether it was a TV commercial, a telly, theatre, whatever, all they were interested in was, you were on Bridge?
Yeah.
Yes. And because there was so many stories that came out of Bridge, because there was such a going. I mean, it was such a big film that, you know, it's like a city. So people die, people get born, you know, all on this movie. And but all they wanted to know was the stories, because there were some amazing stories that came out of it. Save for another day.
Yeah. So obviously that's a big door opener, isn't it?
Yes.
You know?
Well, it was. Yes.
Absolutely. And did you sort of really, I suppose you must have really noticed the gear change from, like, after you've been on that film, and how much easier it became, and how did people, I suppose they sort of thought of you in a very differently from.
Oh yeah, there was no comparison. I mean, Mabel Thorpe was gone forever.
Yes. You didn't have to take your shovel with you, no.
No, I didn't have to take the shovel on any more jobs.
No.
But the funny thing is, having lived like that and carried on like that, you couldn't help sometimes thinking, God, this is a waste of money. You know, because you've been dig the place out yourself, serve this, do that, do the other. Suddenly you turned up, and guys, and I could never understand this, which probably shows my age, but, you know, guys would turn up to do as we all did, but when I turned up, when I was going to do, I was doing a thing in Granada called End of Season, which was a series of plays about a theatre and I was a writer. But you go into the dressing room in the morning and all these guys would turn up doing other parts and nobody had got a shave.
No.
You shaved me. And I thought, what's wrong with you? You're going to have a makeup go. Yeah, have you got a razor? I don't know. But, it is what it is. I mean, even now, I sort of think to myself, now they're sort of saving money in other ways because now everybody has to self-tape and things like that, which is very clever because they've immediately got rid of most of the casting directors. But, I quite I'm old-fashioned. I used to get so many TV commercials that I would know the casting directors quite well. And they were always very, give them credit. They're stood up behind the camera and they can see what you're doing. And if you're doing it wrong, they say, Norman, why don't you do it? Just, and it would help, really help. Yeah. And so I would get quite a lot of TV commercials. And I mean a lot. I must have shot, I did start counting at one point, and I got up to about 200. Which in those days you were getting paid serious money. And but there again, because if you're doing so many, then they start shipping you out to do TV commercial for South America, shot in France, TV for Holland, shot in Germany. There's all this sort of thing. And when they're doing that, you get buyouts. You didn't get the magic repeats, which were,
right.
They made such a difference.
Yeah.
You still can get repeats, but most of the time they would just do a buyout, But
so you've obviously seen quite a change, like you've already mentioned about what's happening, even with like technology, people just filming themselves, and instead of going to see a casting director or whatever, right? So how do you sort of see things now with regard to the industry? If you were coming into it now, it would be very different, I'm guessing.
Yes, very. I think looking back, I sort of there's two ways of looking at it. You can sort of say, well, you're going to start again now, so you've got all the same problems and you've got to find a way through them. But on the other hand, there is the other bit of me that has become more aware of myself. And I mentioned to you that I dried at RADA. And looking back, if I'm really honest, looking back, I could never, it wasn't for want of trying, I could never get a script down as fast as other people. And if you're going to be a superstar, if you're going to be a Kieran Hines, you've got to say, right, I'm going in there, I'm going to learn this now, I'm going to shoot it tomorrow, I'm going to learn that because I'm going to be in America the next day and I'm going to shoot that. I'm going to learn that and that's it. And I just, for all I tried that, so that's why I became small part. Occasionally, I did Brookside. I went into Brookside. I was in for 3 years on and off, and I did all right because then it was budget. You sort of thinking, well, and then perhaps they didn't have the money for the bigger people. I don't know, but but having said that, when I look at my CV now, people say, well, you've been in everything, but I was only in for a week, or a fortnight.
But when it comes to a CV, the fact that you've been there for a week doesn't matter. You've been on that, and you've been on this.
Oh, listen, I did one day on a film called Hearts of Fire,
right?
Playing opposite Bob Dylan. Now, in my dreams, I could not have had a day with Bob Dylan. It's just phenomenal. And we were, Carol and I were invited to go and see Clapton at the Royal Albert Hall, my hero. And I thought to myself, I thought, oh yeah, this is amazing. I've been invited, and I'm in a box, and I'm watching Clapton, and he's that club, fabulous. And I thought to myself, this is wonderful. And you get things like that, and bonuses, and you sort of think, how lucky am I? I mean, if I was going on to a TV show where you had to name drop, I could name drop for an hour, because the number of people that, so I only had a day with Bob, and I spent that day, well, I didn't spend a lot of the day with him, because most of the day he was in the caravan trying to get himself together because he wasn't very comfortable acting.
Right.
And I actually said to him, I said, why are you doing this? And he said, what do you mean? I said, you could pick up a guitar up, walk on stage. I said, I've watched you so many times. I said, and you're just able to entertain thousands of people. I said, why do you want to work like this in front of? Because he was working with some other people that weren't giving him a very easy time, And he said, well, I've got to pay my bills. And I thought, well, book the Albert Hall and do 2 shows. That must pay all your bills.
Yeah.
But no.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, obviously, you meet people that are really, have got a name and everything. And I've always been fascinated by the people that I've met that have got a name. And you sort of think, when you first meet them, you think, they're probably going to be a bit of a prima donna, and they're not.
No.
And I've been pleasantly surprised about how nice a lot of these characters are.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're all like that, but genuinely, have you sort of felt more with that some of these big names?
I find it amazing that the people who are really big, in my eyes, are super. They're so nice, so generous, so understanding, and the people that are sort of slightly up, that are trying their hardest to get there, are total. And you sort of think to yourself, hang on, who the hell do you think you are? If Robert Redford can take time to chat to me, why have you got a problem? And I shouldn't say it, because it's sort of it's the old man thing, isn't it? Well, you're old, because of course the other thing that you haven't had yet, but it will come, is where you're just dismissed on age. It's well, we're not even interested in seeing you, speaking to you. Why are you even sitting at this table? Because everybody else is young.
Right.
But
Well, it's interesting that. I mean, I've not really had a problem with that in what I do. But I think that's probably because there are a lot of people who are a lot older than me still.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's been really, really useful, And yeah, I think the ageism thing, I did sort of feel there was an element of that about maybe about 10 years ago, 15 years ago for me, where a lot of guys that I taught, I mean, when there was a guy who was a DJ on BBC radio, it's like Radio Kent, whatever. But this guy, a lot of these guys had come down from the main BBC and everything. And he actually said to me, I think you must have taught every guitar player in Kent. He said, because whenever I've got a band, they know you. And it's quite interesting then that when there was a certain period of time when I got the sort of the young whippersnappers that I taught, who got this sort of thing, that they knew more than I did, which I think is just an age thing, that when,
Yes.
Yeah. Younger, it's probably the same thing with actors and any artist, they get overconfident about things.
Yes.
And then I'm still in contact with a lot of these characters, and they're completely different now.
Yes.
In fact, one of them even made a complaint to me about younger guitar players. They're doing the same thing to him that he sort of done to me at one point, and I didn't have the heart to sort of go, well.
Yeah. So, okay, so can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I'm just sort of curious about this because, playing guitar means so much to me. And as you know, I only started in lockdown, so everything is relatively new. But when I first started learning, my partner, Carolyn, was very, very good. And she put up with me learning from the very, very basics, And I was sort of thinking the other day, and I thought, do you remember learning to play, starting off?
Right.
Because if we're talking about you or Clapton or that, we've seen you play, we know you can play, we expect it, but it must have started.
Yeah, there's a very interesting thing, this, because it's one of those things you sort of forget, and there must be an element of that within acting. You could look back and go, oh, that was, this.
Yes.
But the actual fundamentals of learning lines for the first time and all that sort of stuff, which is now muscle memory, for want of a better word, right? You might not be able to remember that in the way it felt, right?
Right.
Maybe. That is certainly an issue for people who play a musical instrument, because your mind has sort of erased a lot of that. And what I found was that when I first started teaching, I had to then be able to explain certain things that I did, and I couldn't work out how I did them or how I'd arrived at them. And there's a really good friend of mine who's a great guitar player, guy called Max. He said that he was a teacher as well as a really good player. He said occasionally what he would do in a lesson is he'd take his guitar, he's a right-handed guitar player, and he'd turn it around the other way and try to play it left-handed, to remind him how difficult it was for the person sitting opposite.
Yes.
And I think that's really good, because you sort of do somehow remember.
Yes.
Oh my God, that's really difficult, and it sort of triggers something in your head about connecting back to what it was like, how difficult it was.
Yes.
So that's an interesting thing.
Because I was so much older when I learned to play, I do remember, because it's not that long ago. Jumping back for a minute to the thing you were saying about people being nice and people being arsey. Before I came to the blues camp, I went up to, Bob, and I went up to see Bob. And he had this guy called John Robertson, and who is a very, very good guitarist and plays professionally. And he just and Bob just said to me, because we were trying out this song, and he said, this friend of mine, Bob, is going to come in. And he just drove up, came into the house, and he was so lovely. He gave us so much time. Oh, let me show you, let me hand it. And I just think it is amazing. And I don't think it's just musicians, because I was doing something the other day at Absolute, and everybody in the room is just so nice. And I mean, maybe I've got it wrong, I don't know, maybe I'm remembering wrongly, but some actors could be really make your life very hard.
Yeah, okay. I think what happens is if you've got a thing where there's a competitive thing going on, and that
Yeah.
might well happen in an acting scenario where
Yes.
somebody needs to shine more than somebody else, if you sort of,
Yes.
right?
And somebody resents the fact that you've got a bigger chump.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now that can happen in a band. That definitely can happen, particularly if you're sort of sticking around with people for a long period of time and there is no clear leader for the
All right. Okay.
somebody's got to steer the boat
Yes.
in a band, right? And somebody's going to make the decisions about, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, or this is how we're going to do this. And if you get two people like that who don't see eye to eye,
Yes.
that can be really difficult.
Yes.
But the same token, if you have a whole band of people and nobody takes control, then that's a disaster because nothing really happens, because it's just aimless. It's
Yeah.
got no
Yeah.
direction. So I think it depends on, there is an ego thing.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky one, that, isn't it? I think
It's funny because I played Paul McCartney in John, Paul, George, Ringo and Bert, which was a great bonus because at that time I couldn't play guitar at all. So we just had to mime, and we were given the instruments and you played. I played Paul McCartney and all the others in the play. It was at Nottingham Playhouse. And the funny thing was that the guy who played Lennon really took against me, and there was some.
we was in character then.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He really
But
wasn't in character.
but anyway, we were sort of getting close, and we had a tech run, and in the middle of this scene, in the sort of second act, this guy literally threw a punch and knocked me on my back on the stage. And I thought, that's so unprofessional. You can't do that, however you feel, And Willie Russell was in that night because we were just about to open. And I said to Willie, I said, okay, I can't. Oh, he said, yeah, it always happens. I said, what? He said, the actor who plays Lennon always falls out with the actor who plays McCartney.
Wow.
I said, but we're acting. He said, well, maybe he got carried away.
That's bizarre.
Yeah, I thought that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, it's never ever happened in any other situation.
No, that's really strange. It's funny because I did tell you that I remember hearing that play being advertised on the telly because somebody must have been in a TV program because they used to put at the end of a TV program, didn't they?
That's right. Yeah.
So is going to be at the such and
Yeah.
and I
Yes.
can remember that really clearly. That play. Yeah. So that was a Willie Russell play.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was a much bigger, of course, being from Liverpool, I was a much bigger fan of Bleasdale than Willie Russell. And I did about 5 of Bleasdale's plays, which I just thought he was wonderful because, I mean, aside from everything else, he'd come into your dressing room at the end and say, right, lads, up to the bar. I've got all the pints lined up. Have a good drink on me. Thanks a lot. Great show. But Willie Russell...
Makes a difference, doesn't it?
Yes, but Willie Russell's always got an eye on the next chance, and it was sort of... There was a funny situation where we were only just started rehearsal. We'd done the read through and we just started blocking, and he just turned around and then he came in the evening, and we were all sat in this cafe having something to eat, and it was just the way he did things. It was just sort of, he threw his card on the table, his Amex, and oh, I suppose I better pay for this, you know. Anyway, of course, the girl comes over. It's only a bloody greasy spoon. We don't take Amex. So we said, "Don't worry, don't worry. We'll have a whip round. We'll cover you." But anyway, I mean, let's face it. You know, I mean, he's written some fabulous stuff, and I have to say, I absolutely loved doing John, Paul, George, and Ringo. I mean, it was just, it was fabulous. I mean, it's a great show, and it was wonderful. Wonderful.
Brilliant. Well, we've been chatting for an hour.
Oh, well, I think we'd better go then.
It wasn't boring in any shape or form, as you said.
Well, we won't know that till we get any feedback.
That was really, really great. Thanks.
Okay.
Really nice.
Thank you very much, and it's been
that's
real
good.
fun.
Thanks for your time, mate. And don't disappear when we say goodbye,
Okay.
right?
All right.
All right then, mate. Speak soon then.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.